Listen, if you're gonna play this game, you gotta have the stomach to match. Because while this game is beautiful, it's also extremely bleak. There's no way around it. There's literally no happy moment in this game. It's just filled with death, disease, misery, murder, infected, killers, shitty people, hatred, lies, and just the overall, for the lack of a better word, fuckness of this world. I had to go watch some SpongeBob episodes after playing it. But seriously, there are some crazy things that go on here, but it's all considered standard procedure here in Last of Us Land. That's right, you got fingers being chopped off, arms getting cut off, balls being blown off, disembowelment. You've got this deranged lunatic with this creepy smile who looks like the devil incarnate, capable of making the hardest of men shit their pants. You've got brains being blown out, people getting stabbed in the throat, people getting burned alive, people getting eaten out, people getting fucked, both figuratively and literally, and the list goes on. So look, there were times when I was playing this game where I had to just stop for a moment and contemplate, just contemplate, how humans were able to create something as stunning as what I was witnessing on screen. Especially when playing it at 60 FPS on the PS5. Just the fluidity of the animations, the artistry, the craftsmanship. It's also mind-bogglingly good. It has such a luxurious feel to it. The atmosphere is palpable, guys. That's right, palpable. In fact, there were times when I was playing this game when I was convinced that I was looking out of a damn window playing a simulation of an alternate reality. Shh, just look at this. And honestly, guys, that's not even the game looking its best. Those are, to be honest with you, those are just the easiest clips I was able to find on YouTube. And obviously, you have to deal with the YouTube compression and stuff like that. So, it gives you a general idea of how the game can look, and it's nothing short of stunning. Now we get to the part that's the main source of controversy for this game: the story. Listen, when I first played this game, when it came out, I loved everything about it. But I felt conflicted about the story because on the one hand, I didn't like the direction they took it, right? But at the same time, almost paradoxically, I appreciated it so much because of how well told and exciting it was to watch the events unfold. And when I played it again recently, I went in with an open mind in that I planned to judge the story by its quality, rather than whether or not it lived up to my expectations of what I wanted it to be. And what I found was that in a sea of games with predictable and generic storylines and characters and storytelling techniques, this one felt fresh because it did something that no one expected. And I applaud the developers for taking a risk and trying something different instead of playing it safe. And spoiler alert, I expected Joel to die in this game, but I thought it would happen at the end of it, after sort of like a huge fight, after a climactic battle or something like that, in a cliche sort of fashion. So when I found out that it happened at the start of the game, my mind was blown because it came as a slap in the face. And it just made the game feel like anything could happen and no one was safe. And that just added so much tension and excitement for me to see where the story was headed next and to see how it would unravel because I had no idea. And at first I was just as angry as Ellie, but after learning about Abby's motivation for killing Joel, I was bamboozled because I realized that Ellie's desire to kill Abby was no more justified than Abby's desire to kill Joel, because they were both driven by the same reason. And when you play as Abby, the parallels between her and Ellie's journey are clear as day. Ellie sets out to kill Abby because she killed Joel, who was like a father figure to Ellie. And likewise, Abby set out to kill Joel because he killed her father, who could have potentially even created a cure for the infection, which would have completely changed the world. So you could even argue that Abby was actually the better person and is more justified for wanting to kill Joel, because Joel's act of killing Abby's father could be the reason why the cure was never found. And also, Joel was the perpetrator. I mean, he was the one who initiated the conflict. He killed Abby's father first, right? And then Abby decided to kill Joel. It's not like, Abby killed Joel first, and then, Ellie can start to get revenge. That's not what happened. Joel was the one that sort of initiated the whole sort of conflict. And logically, it makes more sense to root for Abby because emotionally, we want to root for Ellie simply because we're more emotionally attached to her and Joel because we spent the last time getting to know them. And I was flabbergasted, as they say, because I was rooting for Ellie for half the game until I found out why Abby wanted to kill Joel in the first place. And after finding out her motivation, I felt conflicted because this whole time I was rooting for Ellie. But now I actually found it more logical to be on Abby's side because her dad's murder potentially prevented the Fireflies from finding a cure for the infection, and Joel was the perpetrator of the conflict. He started the conflict by killing Abby's dad first. Abby didn't initiate it. Joel did by killing Abby's father, right? And seeing things from Abby's perspective made me understand her resentment toward Joel, and I felt like she was just as justified for seeking revenge as Ellie was, if not more so. So at this point, it didn't make sense to see Abby as the bad guy because she was driven by the same exact reason as Ellie was. So to take Ellie's side at the expense of Abby's just seemed hypocritical and illogical. And this was so cool and frustrating at the same time because I never had a game set up these conflicting feelings like this before and make me feel confused as to whose side I wanted to take. Because the emotional part of me wanted to take Ellie's side, but logically I understood that it would be hypocritical to side with Ellie and view Abby as the villain because they both shared the same motivation as one another. But we want to root for Ellie because we're more emotionally attached to her. And it was so crazy to play as Abby and fight Ellie on the stage because it's like, damn, that's the person I loved and played as, and now I have to fight her as the character who I used to see as the villain, but now I understand that she's no worse than the character who I was rooting for in the first place. So this game just plays with your emotions in such an interesting way, which I thought was so cool. And having you play as Abby, was the only way they could get you to empathize with her because it allowed you to see things from her perspective and understand that she's no different from Joel and Ellie. And without having you play as her, that key component of the story, the idea of making you feel conflicted on who to root for, wouldn't have been possible because you wouldn't have formed a connection with Abby. And the same is true when you were dodging those sniper bullets from Abby's perspective. You just couldn't wait to get your hands on that guy, but then you found out it's Tommy and you're like, oh wait, I love this guy. And it was so cool to see things from different perspectives because it helps you understand why everyone is doing what they're doing. And that for the most part, there are no good or bad people in the fucked up world of The Last of Us. That's right. Everyone's just trying to survive, and there are people that you are more emotionally attached to because you've spent more time with them. I mean, perhaps this video is going on longer than it needs to, but this game also evokes some interesting philosophical questions, such as how do people find meaning in a world where just to survive means to succeed? What exactly are they living for? What are their goals other than survival? And why go through hell to try to survive in a world that's gone to complete shit and is unlikely to get better anytime soon? My guess would be that people are motivated to survive and live in this miserable world because they want to be with the people they love and care for them. I feel that they're motivated by their relationships and wanting to help and be with those that they love. Some people also take it a bit further and want to build cities and bigger communities, such as Jackson, to do the best they can to bring order and revert their own little area to how things were before the pandemic. But even here, the underlying motive has to do with wanting comradeship and getting people together. Anyway, this is a whole nother topic and goes beyond the scope of this little video. And, overall, it was just a pleasure to play a game of this level of quality. Everything about it just oozes, it's just so clean, so pristine, and the way the story plays out is something that really needs to be seen. And the emotions the story evokes and the believability of the characters is unlike anything I've ever witnessed in a video game. I mean, excluding, the original The Last of Us game, which is my favorite game of all time. This game isn't perfect, but it comes really close when it comes to what I look for in a video game. There are some characters who seem to serve no major purpose, and the story and some parts of the moment-to-moment gameplay gets stale. The only main complaint I have when it comes to the gameplay is that scavenging around for supplies and stuff starts to get really stale after a while. And sometimes it also feels like the game has you doing chores. Like when you're playing as Abby and have to figure out how to open, this door, or when you have to spend all this time in this huge open area just gathering gasoline to power a generator so you can advance the story. I mean, listen, it makes sense why they had you do this stuff, and, I'm sort of nitpicking. It makes sense why they had you do this stuff because they wanted to prolong the game a little bit, but it felt like these sort of chores were just there to artificially lengthen the game, and they didn't really advance the story in any way. These sort of, I guess you could say, micro goals in these sections of the game, such as spending an hour in the game with the goal of finding gasoline to power a generator that would open a door so we could finally advance the story. These moments just aren't really exciting, and I wanted to hurry up and get past them so the story could continue and I could get to the juicy parts. These moments, to me personally, felt like they paused the story to cater to the gameplay aspect of the game before the story could continue. And, these moments aren't all bad, though, because Naughty Dog does a great job, with using these slower moments to develop the characters, and listening to their banter helps you connect with them more. And anyway, this is just a small nitpick of mine, and it's not a big deal at all, but it was still something I couldn't help but notice. But overall, this was an outstanding game, and I applaud Naughty Dog for what they've accomplished and for the risks they took. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.